Hi, you guys. It is wonderful to be sitting here with two of these creatures, the furry souls, I think of them, that make my heart fill up and make pressure in my chest, that I love them so much. And the last several days, I have been dealing with so many sad headlines, dangerous headlines, that the coronavirus that is spreading from China and now is in 28 countries at least. It's made me get up in the morning just grateful to be alive, and that sometimes it is being reminded that things like microbes that we can't see can suddenly flare up in a planet and start taking down people. And the sadness that I feel right now, this kind of unsettled danger of what is happening to our planet, I'm going to focus on tonight because I think it is so important that we realize that everything on this earth is sort of sometimes very unstable, and we need to know what is going on. And then I promise that next week I'm going to have some really special new updates that'll range from Antarctica to the moon, possibly to Mars. I've been working on some exciting things, but I'm going to put these two furry souls down so that I can go to my script, but hoping that all of you have your cats or your dogs or your loved ones with you right now, and that you can give them an extra hug in this time when so many things seem uncertain. Now I'm going to put you guys down. Here we go. And now what has been making me feel so sad and agitated and nervous? Today, February 5th, the acting Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security told reporters, quote, "This Wuhan coronavirus has literally only existed on planet Earth in humans for maybe 2 months. There is so much we don't know about it that it leads us to take additional precautions," close quote. And one of those precautions has been implementing new travel restrictions to and from China as the coronavirus cases and death toll keep rising. Currently, it is over 28,000 cases and 565 deaths, and there is more evidence that some infected people show no symptoms but are transmitting the coronavirus to close family. Here are more alarming headlines today. This week, at the Central Hospital of Wuhan, a mother of a newly born infant tested positive for the Wuhan coronavirus. And then, only 30 hours later, her newborn tested positive for the coronavirus as well. What no one yet knows is, did the coronavirus jump from the mother to the unborn baby in the womb? Dr. Zheng Linkong, a senior doctor at the Wuhan Children's Hospital, told reporters, quote, "We should be concerned about the possible new transmission route of the coronavirus from mother to unborn baby," close quote. Japanese health officials confirmed today, February 5th, that 10 people on a Carnival Diamond Princess ship in Yokohama port near Tokyo, Japan, have tested positive for coronavirus, and more cases were possible. The infected people were transferred by Japan's Coast Guard to hospitals on the mainland, while around 3,700 other passengers were placed in quarantine on the cruise ship for the next 2 weeks, and so far 273 more people have been tested on the ship. New headlines today claimed, quote, "Wuhan coronavirus crematoriums are working 24/7 as they burn bodies of people killed by the coronavirus in Wuhan. Workers are reportedly working flat out and without break as they are constantly sent the bodies of victims. It is reported that they have been burning 100 bodies every day since January 28th. Now, Americans flying into the United States who have been in China's Hubei province since the middle of January, where Wuhan is the capital, may be subject to mandatory quarantine up to 2 weeks. U.S. citizens who have been in other parts of mainland China in the past 14 days will undergo screening at one of 11 American airports now designated for coronavirus screenings. Homeland Security Acting Secretary Chad Wolf said, quote, "Once back in the U.S., it is imperative that individuals honor self-quarantine directives for 2 weeks to help protect the American public," close quote. These new rules also mean foreign nationals who were recently in China will be temporarily denied entry into the United States. Meanwhile, most airlines around the world have canceled all flights in and out of China, some through March and others through April. And on Friday, January 31st, the Trump administration added 6 African countries with substantial Muslim populations to stringent travel restrictions: Nigeria, Myanmar, Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Sudan, and Tanzania. Thousands of Chinese laborers work in Africa on the Belt and Road Initiative sponsored by China to build new railroads, seaports, and other infrastructures. So that is a huge population commuting in cycles from China to Africa and back. But with the new coronavirus spreading from person to person, possibly including transmission from people not showing any symptoms, and now reaching 4 continents and traveling around the world faster than SARS did, can this Wuhan coronavirus be driven out of existence as we think we did to SARS? Yesterday, I talked about this question with Sharon Begley, senior science writer at stat.com in Boston, where they report about frontiers in health and medicine. I asked Sharon, what does the future look like if the new coronavirus is not contained?
We're not giving up all hope here. There is still a possibility that the health authorities in China will contain this and eradicate it. That has been done before with the SARS epidemic in 2002-03, killed 800 people, sickened 10 times that many, and yet we do not have SARS in the human population anymore. There are 4 coronaviruses that people around the world get all the time, and they usually cause nothing worse than the common cold. Every year in the United States, something between 12,000 and 60,000 people die of flu. So if this coronavirus became like seasonal flu, then you could be looking at a toll in the tens of thousands every year.
Isn't it true that since this is a new coronavirus, we don't have a human population that is immune to it? And that this might be, if this continues to spread at the rapidity with which it is so contagious, more people could die because there is no immunity to this.
No one is immune, exactly as you say. The question is, if lots of people are exposed this time around, if you have been exposed to this coronavirus and survived, the immunity that you got, much like, if you caught measles as a child, so if you are exposed to this coronavirus in 2020, will you be immune to it in 2021 and 22 and on and on? And there, partly because the science of this is so new, experts disagree on how long such acquired immunity would last.
The case spread in China, it keeps going up and up and up rapidly. And they have, 60 million people now, estimated in 12 or 13 cities that are locked down. So the containment that China has aggressively been trying to impose doesn't seem to be having much of a slowdown on the number of new cases.
Well, the reason for that is before Wuhan and the other cities were quarantined, before travel out of them was stopped, 5 million people traveled elsewhere in the country. So closing the barn door after the horses halfway across the country. Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and other major cities in China almost certainly had travelers there. And that's why we're seeing these big numbers. And so I'm looking at the latest counts. It's 20,704 with 427 deaths. We have not seen the tops of those numbers at all.
Would you expect that we're going to start seeing rises in cases in Europe and Africa and North America because this is such a new coronavirus and it does seem to be so contagious?
China has a huge presence in Africa as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. A lot of infrastructure development, which is being done by Chinese laborers. People from China go to countries in Africa to build the highways, build the railways, the ports, everything else. Some of those workers rotate in and out of those projects. Hundreds are there, then they rotate back to China, and hundreds more replace. So somebody carrying coronavirus, that would definitely be extremely worrisome.
What do you think is the worst case for the world?
Well, unfortunately, we had been thinking SARS is an example of a new virus that spread quickly within the population. SARS killed about 800 people worldwide. Now it seems very likely that we will blow right past that. So then you have to look at other examples from history and ask how bad could this get? And people are invoking the famous or infamous 1917-18 Spanish flu, which came at the very end of World War I and killed an estimated 50 million people worldwide. I think it's not too early to take a look at the lessons of a century ago. But again, in countries with vibrant healthcare systems who know how to put people on respirators, who are not turning them away, as unfortunately is happening in Wuhan and elsewhere in China.
Let me ask you about something that was forwarded to me today. It's from Reddit.com, and it is a series of Reddit notes beginning with, this is actual hard news, January 28th, 2020. Dr. Charles Lieber, the professor and chair of the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Harvard University, was arrested and criminally charged over a contract that he had made with a university in Wuhan, China. And these are several pages with many comments about the Justice Department arresting him and saying in their filing, quote, Dr. Lieber, 60, lied about his contact with the Chinese program known as the Thousand Talents Plan, which the U.S. has previously flagged as a serious intelligence concern. He also is accused of lying about a lucrative contract he signed with China's Wuhan University of Technology, close quote. What is your perspective? You live and work and report in Boston on this shocking arrest of Dr. Lieber, and then so much of what was written about in January 28th, 29th was about his connection to Wuhan and the fact that in Wuhan was, from only 2015 on, a special biosafety lab designed for work with dangerous viruses and microbes.
I would bet a great deal of money that his work there has nothing to do with coronavirus. He is a materials scientist, and the reason he has been charged is because he did not disclose his connections to Chinese universities. But I think in this panic atmosphere, we're going to see all sorts of conspiracy theories that have no basis in reality.
And do you have any insight about why would he even lie about his connections in China?
That I have no insight into.
Is there a timeline been given to reporters about how this case is going to unfold and what's going to happen with him?
No, but again, nothing to do with coronavirus.
What is your own personal greatest concern now, both as a reporter and a human living in the United States in this world?
I have virtually no concern for what is going to happen in this country, but all the reports out of China with people unable to get into hospitals, unable to be seen by doctors, that is a human tragedy.
I also asked Sharon Begley about the confusion of the source of this new Wuhan coronavirus. Pigs, snakes, bats. And she said currently right now the consensus is from genetic analysis that the source in this case is the bat. And there are images and videos that I have seen in where up till now when people ordered bat soup, in some parts of China, they were actually whole little bats in the bowl. And this appears to be one of the roots for this virus. I ask all of you to join me in prayer for all of the coronavirus patients now and for those who are hurting so badly as the death toll has been rising in families, and that I feel that we need to get as much education about this as possible so that we don't live in fear, but we live educated, and that for who knows, for the foreseeable future, I think checking in at the World Health Organization, at CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and staying up to speed on headlines that are breaking in the New York Times, The Guardian in England, and CNN and CNBC, and the Stat out of Boston, where Sharon works, that it is good keeping up with where the headlines are as we go forward, because this could keep going for quite a while. And everybody needs, I think, not to be afraid, but to educate. And I will try to keep bringing everything that I think is relevant to understanding what is happening, and hopefully it will end like SARS did and the H1N1. But this is really something, the way it is taking off. But on the lighter note, and another whole huge fascinating facet of material that I have been studying as intently as I have the coronavirus, is new updates that I look forward to sharing with you next Wednesday, February 12th, about Antarctica and the moon. And I think it's going to be fascinating. And I hope all of you will be back and will join here and bring your family and your friends. And we will explore something that I had never seen before. And that'll be next Wednesday, February 12th. Now, Peggy, standing by for questions from this wonderful Earthfiles live stream audience. I love all of you. I love your questions. I love your letters. I love your emails. Thank you so much. Let's see what you are concerned about tonight.
Hi, Linda. First, I'd like to say thank you to some of our super chats.
Yes.
One to Shark, Vicky and Kiki. Thank you so much for your super chats tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We have one question that goes along with the topic that's being covered tonight. And what do you think it's going to take for this virus to hit a plague status?
Well, it's already at what is called a pandemic. A pandemic has been defined medically as the spread of a particular disease when it reaches 2 continents. We're at 4 now. And the way this is going, it could be around the world. And the coronavirus, as you heard Sharon trying to put it into some context, when you get a cold, like just most normal colds are a coronavirus. And a coronavirus is on the RNA side of our genetic makeup. There's DNA and RNA, and a lot of other viruses will be on the DNA side. This is on the RNA side. And coronaviruses have sometimes been puzzling, and when SARS hit, the way it was expanding, I remember this. I remember covering it starting in 2002, and it was the death toll. It was clearly a very, very lethal coronavirus, and it was scary. It was scary because the death toll was persistent. Now, the public health people and CDC and WHO have been trying to put this in perspective day after day, that the number of cases, now over 28,000, and the number of deaths, which today had reached 565, it probably have exceeded, because every single time that I have been going to check on what is the current death toll and the current cases, they've just kept rising, rising, rising. But in terms of the percentage to public health people, they look at the percentage of death to the whole case structure, and they will be like at 1%, 2%, whatever it is. So right now, this is moving in both case and death toll on a constant upward trend. And this is after China locked down some 60 million people in about 13 cities. It's hard to imagine. And the words that are coming out from some of the European papers have been that people in those lockdown cities know that the head of China, Xi, really doesn't want anybody sending out complaints. But what is beginning to leak is that they're running out of all kinds of supplies and food. And you've got 1.4 billion people in China, the largest population of a nation on the world. If you are stopping air traffic, if you have people quarantined, if you've locked down 60 million people in 12 or 13 cities, which is the current state, how do you get food and medical supplies in and out of those cities? It's not clear at all. And how big a crisis is this actually under the surface of what we're getting in terms of mathematical numbers? What is actually happening in those 12 to 13 cities? It's remarkable. I think it is fair to say that nothing like this has ever happened. That many people under a government that are in a lockdown because of the threat of a disease that hasn't stopped increasing in both rates of new cases and death toll. So, as Sharon brought up the idea that it's not pleasant to think about, but it is a reality check, that at one point, at the early part of the 20th century, in that 1917, 1918 time period, 50 million, 50 million deaths. So right now, versus 50 million at the beginning of the last century, the current death toll of 565 is not yet, it's not even out of where there were 800 deaths with SARS. So I think that we're in a stage where the governments, all the governments are trying to contain. And the containing is shutting down the airports in China, shutting down railroads and all sorts of things in and out of those cities. And that if the death toll gets up in the next week, which at the rate it's been climbing, if it continues, we would be into 800 next week. And 800 was the top out for SARS back in 2003, 2-3. So if this keeps going over the 800 deaths, with all of the efforts now that are going on worldwide and are important and are necessary, I think that's, if I were appealing as a human to my fellow humans tonight, it would be, right now it is really necessary to have these very aggressive lockdowns and to stop the air traffic and those people in the cruise. I read one article that said that the people who are on that cruise boat in Japan that are locked down for the next 14 days after having been to sea for 14 days on the cruise officially, that there was a quote that some of the people were raising glasses, not in joy, not in glee, but sort of happy that they weren't were not sick, and that they were praying for the people who had been tested and were sick, and that they were grateful to be alive and well. And I think if every one of us everywhere felt grateful that we are alive and that this planet is starting off 2020 in an agitated state, from volcanoes to booms to seismic to the coronavirus to political instability and to even an app that wouldn't work in Iowa. What a time. So let's keep going. And I thank every one of you for all of your chat support. And let's see what other questions we have, Peggy.
Another question along these lines. People were asking, do you believe that WHO, as well as China, do you believe they're being completely transparent about what's going on and the numbers that is being released?
One of Eric sent me this. I'm going to just talk about this as an example that one of the things that we all have to watch out for are people who are trying to make money with sensational clicks on the web someplace in the world, with headlines that have nothing to do with truth or reality, and they're just to make click money. That's a real problem. And I do not know if what I'm going to quote is in that example. It may be, and it may not, but it goes to the heart of the question that we don't know exactly what is coming from China, because the head of China, Xi, is made it very clear that he does not want the Chinese nation to be expressing desperateness or anything. It's like lock up those cities and no more. Well, Eric sent me this tonight to check out. One Chinese news site allegedly keeps leaking, meaning, and it shows a image where it's in Chinese, and it says this particular website may have accidentally leaked, quote unquote, alleged real data on the Wuhan virus deaths. But then when you see these numbers, it seems impossible. But this is what's now being, we'll call it kind of bursting out into web world. And I would be very cautious, but the very fact that we are bringing this up, the very fact that you have the question, the very fact that I and other reporters also, what are the numbers that we are getting? How realistic are they? This one today says 154,023 infections and 24,589 deaths from the Wuhan coronavirus being reported in China. That would be over the top. Okay, so that's an example. Another one, though, that has been sort of creeping around the edges are these issues of what may or may not have happened in the biocontainment lab in Wuhan. It has only one of the few in the world, is in Wuhan. Well, this Dr. Lieber at Harvard, the arrest was at the end of January. It's not exactly clear what was it that he was hiding in terms of his contracts with China universities. And the Sharon Begley at STAT is firm in saying that she does not think that his arrest and his association with the Chinese labs and the Wuhan, that very, very sensitive hazard lab, that she said, I don't think it has anything, she would bet large money, that it had nothing to do. Well, when you are in a time like this, where the headlines are changing literally every hour, keeping up with any facet of what I've been bringing up tonight, just these subjects alone, it's changing constantly. And to get reality checks is why the networks pay lots of money to try to have people on the ground in other countries to try to get a reality check, because it can be so difficult if you are depending upon, let's say, web information. So my guide right now to all of you would be, keep coming to my Earthfiles news website. I'm trying very hard to compress what I think is the most important information on a daily basis that is important, and not doing hugely long reports, but focused and updating through the day, and then in some cases starting a new report. So go to Earthfiles. I will always do web links to what I think are the most important, like the CDC and the World Health Organization and STAT and others. And begin to have your own sense of reality checks versus the world out there where people don't play fair on spreading totally false news for money. It's something that every reporter now must weed through. And those of you who care about learning what is really going on, you have to do the same thing that I and reporters have to do. You have to do take a lot of time to try to separate the wheat from the chaff. And that's the world we live in. And there are papers that are doing a really good job, I think, and some TV, that The Guardian in the UK is, I think, superb. The New York Times, I think, is superb. And you will find the Conversation, I think, does wonderful background interviews, and STAT and other places are trying to be a reality check on the facts when it comes to things happening in medicine and the health. And Earthfiles, I just always will try to the best of my ability to keep guiding you with what I think are facts and data that are at least knowable, and that my goal is always to strengthen you with information, never with fear. What about another question?
This is about the ET presence and our afterlife. A viewer had wanted to know, are there soul traps, and did ETs create it?
I wish that I had a hard answer for you on that. Whitley Strieber and I, Jim Mars, God rest him wherever he is, and I, Bud Hopkins, God bless him wherever he is. Those three guys and I have had lots of deep conversations about this whole issue of, when you interview a lot of abductees, as I have and they had, you always end up in discussions about the interest of at least the gray ones, which can come in a huge menagerie. I personally am convinced, I don't have proof, but I personally am convinced that when you are talking about the gray types that can be anywhere from 2 to 3 feet up to 7 or 8 feet, they can be eyes that wrap around, go all the way to the sides, or are walnut shaped, or are almond shaped. I think all the vast differences in heights, what they wear, what they seem to be assigned to, varies all over the place because it would be like artificial intelligence, maybe in this world in another 50 years, that we are going to have artificial intelligence, but they're going to look like humans. And they're going to be cleaning houses and cooking meals and doing secretarial work. And already they're starting to show these human-looking AI androids, let's call them androids, and that's happening to us already. So if the Greys are a menagerie of artificial intelligence in which the progenitors maybe still now, but maybe were once upon a time, biological intelligences that may or may not have run into some sort of a catastrophe or a disease or who knows, then here's the question. I'm just going to cut to the chase. I've had several deep conversations about this recently. If the soul is a viable recycling in and out of containers force, and that it is related to, I call it the divine field, others have their other own names, and that the link between the soul is to that which I would call the divine field. And it goes in and out of container bodies. And that in this particular universe, which may turn out truly to be proved as holographic, a projection, perhaps a entropy reduction trainer for souls, it would mean everything in this universe was constructed, evolved, and pitted around the issue of, will souls in an infinite number of lifetimes, in an infinite number of containers, always begin to choose life, light, love? If that were the ultimate goal, and that some of what is trying to interact with this universe, maybe some of the Greys, are coming from another dimension, and they don't want to stay in that dimension, and they want to come into this matter universe, and they have understanding about the relationship between souls and the divine field and eternal cycling out of container bodies. Maybe if we knew the whole big truth, we would realize that some of the alien presences in this universe are projecting themselves here because they want the most valuable thing in this universe. They want a soul because they don't have one from where they come. If that hypothesis were true, then the whole issue of birth, life, death as a passage into another life, into another existence, the reincarnation would be the machinery of this universe. If that kind of recycling does not take place in all universes and all dimensions, then our universe might be something really special that other intelligences want to get into because they understand that there is a recycling in this particular construct, if it is a hologram. And that's what they want. And so one of the greatest contests in this universe might be, how do you tempt matter life to a point that you could get their soul? I don't have a firm answer, but I think that there is enough discussion in people who have been in the human abduction syndrome that when you get down into the nitty-gritty of what haunts them, what they think about, what they dream about, what they worry about, or even what they have joy and exhilaration about, it always seems to end up circling around the life force that they relate to as the soul, and that the soul that we have is so vital, and that if we just understood how incredible they are, and perhaps rare in the cosmos of multiple universes, multiple dimensions, that maybe we'd feel joy just at recognizing the pressure that we would feel in our heart and in the feeling of love for a child, love for chocolate and fluffy, love for another adult human being, and love for all of the creatures on this planet. I think that in the fires of Australia and seeing those koala bears burned and trying to get water out of a street with their burned hands, and that I feel this unbelievable pressure that fills me up, and it makes me want to cry, but it also makes me want to hold those koala bears. I think that's the signal, the pressure from the soul. And that the more you feel it, whether in joy or sadness or grief or whatever, the more you tie yourself to that presence. So those are the kinds of discussions that I have had with Whitley Strieber and with Jim Marrs and with Bud Hopkins and others. I don't have any firm answers, but here at my Earthfiles live stream, what I have come to love hearing from you all, that even if I don't have hard answers, that you all seem to sense I really truly care about you, about us, about this earth, about understanding what other life and intelligences want, and that I'm trying to bring you pressure of fact when I can, and otherwise I hope we can continue to have great value in being able to talk about these subjects where there really aren't hard facts yet, because we're on a planet where the governments and power brokers have kept that headline from us for centuries that we're not alone in this universe. And I'm impatiently waiting for that to break along with you. So do we have time for, I think we have time for another 1, 2, 3 questions. I'll go through as fast as I can.
Hi, Linda. A viewer asks, why is there so little known about the blonde Nordics, and what details can you share with us?
That is an excellent question. It comes up all of the time. I thought that the very best person who has ever given me the most information was the analyst from the Defense Intelligence Agency that I have gone into various facets of our 7-hour discussion here in previous live streams. He is the one who is retiring from 23 years in the DIA, worked for a month to put together a meeting between me and a man who worked in the World Bank. And he wanted to talk with me about what some of the abductees call the resurrection technology, the tubes that have light at the top and the bottom, and people have seen human bodies in them, ET bodies in them. And it led to this question: if abductees are looking at tubes that keep a large variety of bodies alive for unknown purposes, and they include what look like Homo sapien and a bunch that don't look like Homo sapien, tall, brown skin, black hair, 8 feet tall. Blonde, tall, like 6, 7 feet, usually not 8 feet, but somewhere mostly 7 feet, that our government calls them Nordics. Abductees have always called them, they look like Swedes or Nordics. Those are common phrases. Others fall into a category that might be something else we don't even recognize. But the blonde Nordics, tall, black-haired, white-skinned, humans, gray types, they've all been associated at some time or another in the abduction together. And when you ask the people in the abduction, who's in charge? One case, it was a family in 2 cars on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, busy. They're in tandem as a family on a holiday. And without even remembering, without even knowing that anything happened on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, both families in 2 cars, they're a bunch of relatives and they're divided in 2 cars, they end up inside of a huge round craft, and greeting them are the grays with the black slanted eyes. But the whole major association during this period of time with all of these people, and this one particular woman, is that they see tall blondes, very thin, blue leotards on one that have hair, blonde hair, shoulder length, blue eyes in some, gold eyes with green or black pupils in others. All, this was very interesting, whether they were blonde with blue eyes or blonde with green eyes. The pupils were drawn not as black, but as orange or gold, but looking like snake eyes. And they had insignias. They had what looked like we'd wear military ribbons. And the insignia was fascinating. Now remember, it's a mix. They're met by the grays. And now they're interacting with these tall blondes. Female one. The blonde female, the patch was a circle and had 2 triangles, like if you had a triangle like this and then you overlap like this. So there would be a diamond where you overlapped the 2 triangles like point to point. And this abductee got the clear impression that that symbol of a circle with the overlapping triangles said, or got telepathic information, the merging of 2 worlds. But she did not know who the 2 worlds were, but she had the distinct impression that something about these blondes with the grays, and then came another type, 8 foot tall, white skin, she said, like a cotton sheet or a piece of typing paper. Skin that white. That would really stand out in a crowd on Earth if somebody were as white as a piece of typing paper, white. But that those white ones, really white, had black hair. So there was this mix. On top of that, in the tubes, this was another one of those cases where there were all these tubes with all these different types in them. And one of the dominant ones that she saw in the tubes, red hair, white skin, very, very tall. Who's in charge? She thought that the blonde-haired female with the blue eyes with the colored vertical snake eye, wearing the blue leotard, she thought that that female seemed to be in charge, but she also had this feeling from the all white-skinned black hair. So what is the relationship with the Greys? Because there are so many other abductions where the Greys, people would say they're the ones in charge, not in this one. And that kind of boils down where I was headed in the answer to the question about the blondes. They're very mysterious. They show up. They seem to be extremely advanced, extremely intelligent, extremely crisp, very orderly, and that they seem to, the DIA guy said, that he divided it from all of his work, that there were three main civilizations that have been interacting with our planet for at least 270 million years. And the way he broke it down, the tall blondes, who chose actually to occupy tremendous numbers of square miles on this planet by going down to the bottom of the oceans and through the oceans, and said the blondes occupied tremendous areas of this planet beneath the basins of the oceans and the seas. That the Greys were a huge menagerie, and they liked basing themselves in mountains. And then the third, from his point of view, were the reptilians. When you get into these discussions about which one's which, there was one man in the military context, like the DIA guy, and he said, you would think that the blonde Nordics that sort of resemble all of the stone carvings in Western Europe of the Archangel Michael, and that throughout history, the prototype beautiful angel would be blonde-haired, blue-eyed. He said, you would think that it would be clear to us, meaning the government dealing for 70, 80 years with trying to understand this assortment of various intelligences interacting with our planet, it would be clear exactly who the blondes are and what do they want. But he said, they can be troublemakers for us. What they want, what the Greys want, what the reptilians want are different. And I was left with the impression that even though the government of the United States may have done treaties with Greys over abductions, that the blonde ones may or may not be the key to who our government actually dealt with face to face. It's not clear. Colonel Corso told me that at the Trinity site at White Sands, he had a face-to-face with an extraterrestrial being that was very tall, very white. And that's the one who telepathed to him. It's a new world coming, if you can take it. And that was Philip Corso's most dramatic interaction, even though he worked in the Pentagon for General Arthur Trudeau, and he worked on animal mutilation cases, he worked on abduction cases, he worked on our trying to understand which ETs are on the moon, because we've known for a long time there's been a base on the moon. But ferreting out which type has which agenda in which year and which decade and which century, wow, it is a really well-kept secret. And I think it's not just because of what human military and intel people have tried to do. I think we're dealing with very advanced intelligences who have very, very complex, shall we say, research projects on our planet, and we are definitely one of the subjects. The development and evolution of Homo sapien. And maybe all of the confusion about which type has which agenda is because they don't want us to know, even if they compete with each other. All right, Peggy, what about another?
If we ever had the government come out, show us all the proof that they have that aliens exist and they are living amongst us, how do you believe that will affect the world as a whole?
Well, it may just be me, but I would stand up and start cheering. Not because everything was peaceful, fine, no more problems, no. It would be because there is so much energy contained in me of frustration that we are living on such a concocted planet for centuries, millennia, manipulated genetically, politically, religiously, every other way, by forces that are not my fellow humans. To know that we are on a planet that has been used as a laboratory for millions of years, and that now we are at 7.6 billion who have never ever once been told the truth about where the origins of Homo sapien really came from, genetic manipulation of DNA and already evolving primates to create Homo sapien by others. Let's use that word. By other than Homo sapien. And then to be in the 21st century. Who are the power brokers that run this planet now? And when Spartan 1 asked me, when I was doing that very, very difficult interview, and we were having to worry about whether somebody was going to break in, because all he's trying to do is tell me about what he saw in Antarctica. And he asked me when was the last time that Antarctica was without ice. And the research doesn't find an absolute fact, but it finds a consensus that the last time that huge structures could have been built without 2 miles of ice getting in the way was 33 to 34 million years ago. And when I told him that, he said, what right would any human have to keep anything that was 34 million years old from the whole planet? And in that question, and in that reality of what is down in Antarctica, is the bottom line to the frustration that I feel and the energy that I feel. I like facts and truth. I think we are all weakened when we are fed manipulation for other people's political gain. That there have been self-serving forces on this planet for centuries. I don't know who they all are. But it hasn't been run. This planet has not been run for Homo sapien. If it were, we would not have millions of children dying from not having food. If it were, we would not be on a planet where a coronavirus can rip through huge populations with nobody being able to stop it. There is a kind of wanting so much for the whole planet of all of us to at least be sharing singular facts and truth about our real relationship with this universe that has been so lacking on this planet for so long. That for that headline, we're not alone in this universe, and here are some of the reasons why. To finally go around the world, and there will be so many people will say, I told you so. And there might be others who will be shocked. But in their shock would be education. In their shock would be a new strength eventually, because on the other side of shock is learning. You're only shocked when you learn something you didn't know or see something you've never seen before. And that, to me, wow, We need that so badly on this planet to shake up every human and every old bad idea that has kept us in a state of somebody else's control. Will everything be then fine and dandy? No. It seems to be the state of Homo sapiens sapien. We are a flawed species. We're too violent. We're too manipulatable. But maybe we wouldn't be so violent, and maybe we wouldn't be so easily manipulated if we knew the truth about our actual origins of genetic manipulation of already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. There's got to be a reason for why we're here. And maybe it has something to do with the sustaining and the evolution of souls. On the other side of that headline, we're not alone in the universe, I think of 1,000 subjects that I've only been able to talk with only a handful of people about, that suddenly, if the whole planet began to talk about some of the difficult subjects, everybody might grow up more. And if Elon Musk is going to be launching for Mars in 4 years, and he says he's going to put 1 million humans from this planet in a shuttle service using his starship, going from Earth to Mars, what does he know that the rest of us don't? And if everybody that gets settled on Mars is still kept dumb and blind about other life in the universe, wouldn't that be crazy? Just from what we all know now? So, somehow what is happening in terms of the Space Force that President Trump is now talking about with great energy, and the fact that he even mentioned in his State of the Union address last night, talking about we're going to the moon, we're going to Mars, we're moving into and becoming a spacefaring civilization. We deserve that headline. We're not alone in this universe. Friends, neutrals, hostiles. We need to know it all. And on that note, I'll see you next Wednesday with 2 fascinating updates. And thank you for being here tonight at a time when the news around the world is sad, but we need to face what the reality is. May the divine field bless this planet and all of you. Thank you.